Sarah Alvarez never imagined her life would pivot overnight. To her, life was an endless loop. Waking at 5 a.m., preparing a simple breakfast for her daughter Lucia, cleaning an office building from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., then returning to their cramped Bronx apartment before sunrise. Nobody remembered her name. They called her Janitor, cleaning lady, or didn't look at her. But Sarah didn't mind. She was used to living in society's gray zones, unseen yet existing. That night began like any other. A cold wind whispered through the gaps in the tall glass windows of the upscale financial tower in downtown Manhattan. Sarah was wiping down the basement hallway, where employees often spilled coffee and soda after hours. Lucia had a low fever. Sarah had called her landlord to ask for a few more days to pay rent. Her phone had been shut off. Her credit card was overdrawn for weeks. But she didn't complain. She'd learned not to collapse, at least not visibly. When she walked down to level B2 to empty the trash, she heard an unusual sound, metal clinking on concrete, and then a groan. At first, she thought to turn away. That garage was known as a temporary hangout for maintenance workers or sleeping folks in cars after their shifts. But this sound was different. She crept closer, gripping the trash bag like a weapon. And there he was. A man lay curled on the cold floor. His gray coat was stained red around the left shoulder. Salt and pepper hair, face contorted in pain, and breathing so labored each gasp seemed like a fight. No one else around, no cameras, no footsteps. Sarah rushed over and knelt beside him. "Sir," she called softly. He didn't respond. Blood seeped from the corner of his mouth. She didn't know much about medicine, but she'd learned basic first aid in Cuba before coming to the U.S. She found his pulse, weak but present. Instead of calling 911, Sarah dialed the building's emergency line. She knew the night security team trained in first aid could reach the basement fast. Once she was sure help was on the way, she slipped away, silent as she'd come. No name was left behind, no words, just doing what was right as she always did. 3 weeks passed. No one mentioned that night. Sarah didn't dwell on it either. The man might have lived or not. She didn't know his name or rank. All she could think of was Lucia, still coughing through the night in their empty fridge. Then, on a Monday evening after her shift, she found a black car parked outside their shabby apartment building. A man in a suit stepped forward. He moved like someone with military training. "Are you Sarah Alvarez?" Sarah froze. "Yes, may I help you?" "Mr. Winston asked me to invite you. Penthouse, 11 Central Plaza. Tonight at 9. "Winston? He says you saved his life." Sarah stood silent. A cold gust swept past. She remembered the whining pain, the salt-pepper hair, the blood on the concrete. She nodded. "I'll be there." The Penthouse lay on the 57th floor of the tallest midtown financial tower. Sarah had never set foot in a place like this. Each step on the polished mahogany floor made her feel out of place. The floor-to-ceiling glass looked onto Central Park, shrouded in the evening mist. Warm yellow lights reflected on abstract paintings. No one else was there. Soft piano music drifted from a hidden speaker, as if asking her who she was. Then a voice from behind a slightly ajar door. "You've arrived on time." Frederick Winston emerged, no longer pale and bloody from 3 weeks ago. He stood straight, clad in a charcoal-tailored suit, a dark tie fastened with a silver bird pin, but something in his eyes hadn't healed. The part that once felt invincible was learning to be human. Sarah said nothing. Her gaze was fixed on a faint scar by his collarbone. "I remember your eyes," he said gently, "and your voice, calm, resolute. Without you that night, I wouldn't be here." She remained silent, His coat scar held her attention. "I'm not good at saying thank you," he continued, pouring 2 glasses of water at a bar. "But I have something for you." Sarah accepted the glass but didn't drink. "What is it?" "An opportunity," he said, looking deeply at her. "I need your help, no one else." He explained. About that night. About the pain of falling, not knowing who wielded the knife. About a betrayal so close. It might have been someone from his second family, the Winston Holdings board. "You're the only outsider. You have no reason to lie, no loyalty to them. A perfect witness." Sarah chuckled ironically. "I'm a real outsider. I mop ground floor toilets. I'm paid below living wage. No insurance. Nobody remembers me." "Exactly why you see what they don't," he replied, unwavering. Sarah was silent. Manhattan glowed outside, a network of twinkling secrets. She looked at her reflection, small, blurry, but her eyes were clear. At that moment, she didn't know what held her there: curiosity, kindness that had nearly killed her countless times, or a quiet hope that if she could do something meaningful, maybe her daughter would have a different life. No contract was signed. No money changed hands. But Sarah nodded. Winston managed a real smile, for the first time in weeks, not like a CEO's, but a man reborn by a flicker of hope. That night, back home, Lucia slept with a half-colored book in hand. Sarah sat by her bed, brushing her daughter's hair. A lone shadow stretched on the wall. Sarah wasn't sure if it was hers or someone she was becoming. We think of ourselves as side characters in others' stories, but sometimes a single action, a choice, can become an unexpected turning point. If someone ever did something that restored your faith in humanity, you might leave a few lines below. Sometimes a short story can help someone feel less alone in this vast world. Sarah didn't know where this journey would lead her, but she was certain. Tomorrow she'd return to that building, not with a mop, but with sharp eyes. And in the darkness of lit offices, a silent hunt had begun, between the survivor and the one who saved him. On Sarah's first day as the temporary assistant to the CEO at Winston Holdings, nobody knew who she was. Receptionists, admins, all eyes were skeptical, but nobody dared question. Because she was beside Frederick Winston, they made no introductions, no email announcement, no business cards, no nameplate on any door. Just a nod, "She's with me," and the giant machine quieted. Sarah shadowed him, watching faces. For an hour she silently stood behind him in meetings. No notes, no nods, only observation. And she saw things that those high above never noticed. She saw the CFO, Walter Kane, glance away whenever Winston mentioned auditing staff allowances. She saw the VP's assistant swirl her laptop screen closed when Sarah entered the copy room, even if it was just an Excel file. She saw forced smiles and murmured agreement. Sarah didn't study finance or annual reports, but she understood people, and this place was full of people who hid knives behind friendly grins. 3 days later, Winston asked, "What do you see?" Sarah sat straight, unwavering. They all know something, but only one fears being found out. Who? Walter Kane. Winston handed her a folder, meeting schedules from the past 3 months. "Look them over. Don't search for mistakes, look for hidden mistakes." That night, after tucking Lucia in, Sarah spread the folder across the table like solving a code. Every time Walter Kane's name appeared in meetings at strange hours, her heart raced. On at least 4 occasions he was in the building at times Winston should have been off, including the night of the attack. A man with no official reason prowled the ground floor. The same floor the near-fatal assault happened. She captured a freeze frame from the B2 security camera, a black-suited figure's reflection in an SUV mirror, blurry, but the striped tie was unmistakably Walter. She had no proof, only a hunch. But that hunch had kept her alive all those difficult years in the Bronx. She sent the image to Winston via the encrypted app with a single line. "It could be him, but I need certainty." A week later, Sarah was invited to an internal company cocktail party. Suits, dim lights, hushed conversation. Winston didn't accompany her. He wanted to test if she could read people solo. Sarah wore a borrowed black dress and second-hand heels saved from earlier interviews. She didn't stand out by design, yet she did by presence. At the bar, Walter Kane approached. "I've never seen you before," he said, holding his drink. "I'm new," she replied with a mild smile. "What do you do?" he asked. "Observe. Remember what people try to hide." Walter paused, just a heartbeat long enough for her to notice his reaction. Unease. He regained composure and changed the subject. When he walked away, Sarah pulled a napkin from her purse and scribbled loosely, "The most dangerous person is the one who doesn't ask your name, but asks what you do." She folded it and tucked it into her jacket pocket. Sometimes a seemingly innocent remark holds a piece of the puzzle. And if you've ever encountered someone like Walter Kane in your life, someone whose gaze made your spine shiver, you're not being oversensitive. Your instincts might be right. If you've reached this part of the story, you've heard someone speak the truth in a room full of liars and kept it to yourself. If this resonates, feel free to hold on to it. Not because it's subscribed, because you're worth being remembered. The night was thick with light rain. Manhattan shimmered with skyscraper lights. But on the topmost floors of Winston Holdings, only one office was lit, where Sarah was working by a single lamp, scanning screen after screen like an untrained detective guided by instinct. She didn't know what she was doing, neither HR nor admin nor security. But when Winston messaged, "Trust no one," she knew the line between duty and survival had blurred. Then she found it. A recovery of recently deleted internal emails via software Winston installed, marked Phase 2, Exit Strategy. The final message was dated one day before the attack. She didn't need to be an analyst to see this wasn't accidental. Exit strategy isn't loyalty, it's conspiracy. She rose and walked to the window. Wall Street pulsed below. People in finance believed they controlled fate, but Sarah understood that sometimes fate lies with the person seeing what power hides. The next morning, Winston met her at an empty cafe. No guards, no entourage. He looked thinner, grayer. "Kane is rallying to remove me from the board," he said. "Next week they'll vote me out, citing my health." "Are you going to let it happen?" Sarah asked. "No," he replied, looking her in the eyes. "I'll let him hang by his dagger." Sarah told him everything: emails, schedules, photos, alliances. Winston nodded, then pulled a small silver key from his pocket. "My old office, floor 39, locked safe. The code is Lucia's birthday, to find the real evidence in there." Sarah was stunned. "How did you know her birthday?" He shrugged, then fixed her with a gaze that spoke louder than words. He'd been observing her, long before she knew she was in this game. "Because I needed to know who held my life in their hands," he said softly. "And I felt you wouldn't betray." The room on floor 39 was an archive, unused for months. Sarah closed the door, gripping the silver key. A faded whiteboard behind the safe. She typed in the code, 0517, and heard a soft click as metal swung open. Inside lay a thin file, a USB stick, and a handwritten note. She opened the USB first, plugged in, and a video played. A hidden camera clip from 3 months ago showed Walter Kane in a secret meeting with 2 other board members. Kane said clearly, "If Winston plans to sell the company and give shares to employees, we need to strike first, or my 20 years of work will end in a polite handshake." "And the accident?" asked one. "Just one dark stairwell or a lapse in basement security." Sarah paused the video. This wasn't just a plot to remove Winston. It was attempted murder, premeditated, with accomplices. She took a deep breath. She knew what to do. On the day of Winston's removal vote, the board met on floor 58. Walter Kane led the proceedings solemnly. "I've always respected Mr. Winston, but after the incident, he's no longer fit to lead." The door opened. Sarah walked in. No knock, no introduction. A handheld projector in her hand. Kane froze. "Who are you?" She didn't answer. She set the projector, then hit play. Kane's voice filled the room. Silence. One board member, Elaine, silver-haired, stood and looked straight at him. "Walter, do you have anything to say?" Kane smiled, a chilling smile, not of fear, but of someone who knows it's too late. "Nothing anyone here doesn't already know," he replied. Silence. Sarah scanned the faces. Some looked away, some sighed, some looked at her, with gratitude. Winston entered shortly after. He didn't look at Kane or the board, he looked at Sarah. "Thank you," he said. One word, no fanfare, heavier than applause. Kane was quietly escorted out. No handcuffs, no press. Handled the way power does, but Sarah knew he would never return. And her evidence had forced the system to act. She didn't ask Winston what came next. He said, "I'm resigning." "Why?" she asked. "Because I let it happen under my watch." A week later, in the Bronx apartment, Sarah opened the handwritten letter she'd found in the safe. Winston's handwriting. Black ink, ivory paper, brief. "If you're reading this, you found the truth. It also means I was right about you. They won't call you a hero, they won't put you in papers. But know this, I hand the company to the board on one condition. You lead internal integrity. You may not think you're qualified yet, but I know you're not the cleanest. You're the one who won't stay silent when confronted with dirt." At the bottom is a final line. "Lucia will not mop floors like her mother." Sarah folded the letter and placed it beside her daughter's drawing. She didn't cry. Not tears, but the weight of years unseen and unrecognized being lifted off her shoulders. On Monday morning, she walked into Winston Holdings, not invisible anymore. Same hair, same clear eyes. But now automatic doors opened because her name was in the system, not because she followed someone. People looked, some nodded, some smiled gently. She returned the gesture with quiet dignity. The elevator carried her to the 40th floor, her new office. A bronze nameplate read, "Internal Integrity Office, Director S. Alvarez." No one at the company knew she once scrubbed their mess, and she didn't need them to. What she needed was to sit at the right place and keep things clean from within. Lucia still attended her public school nearby. She was healthy now. Every night she told her mom what she learned, what she drew, who she played with. Sarah still washed dishes with warm water and shopped at the same neighborhood store. But behind that closed door, another life was unfolding. Not for her, but for her daughter. If you made it this far, because this journey touched you in some way, maybe you've also stood in rooms full of liars, while quietly keeping your truth. And if this story matters to you, you can choose to never miss another chapter. Not because of this channel, but because you deserve to be remembered. One autumn afternoon, as slanted sunlight passed through the glass towers, Sarah received an anonymous package. Inside was an oak wood photo frame and a short handwritten note. The photo, a grainy still from that night's surveillance camera in the garage. Sarah kneeling beside Winston, her hand over his injury, looking off into the dark, perhaps waiting for a miracle. The note read in flowing, slanted script. Some come to correct a wrong. Some come to remind us that wrong should never have happened. You are both. Unsigned. But Sarah knew who sent it. She placed the photo on her desk next to Lucia's drawing of a house with 2 lit windows. Her office was simple. No leather chairs, no gold nameplates, no private coffee bar. Just a whiteboard, a few folders, and the cheap pens she was used to. She kept one item, her old faded blue cleaning cap. Sometimes she wore it when working alone, not to recall the hard times, but to remind herself she'd overcome them. On a Friday afternoon, when Sarah took Lucia to visit the building, they stood by a window on the 40th floor, looking out over the city under sunset. Lucia stared at her reflection, a familiar expression that pained Sarah. The way her daughter watched silently, remembering everything, it mirrored her mother. "Mom, did you work here?" Lucia asked, looking up. "Yeah, I mopped floors, cleaned toilets, pushed trash carts." Lucia frowned, surprised. "What do you do now?" Sarah smiled. "I stop others from cleaning up their mess, or at least show who made it." Lucia was silent a moment, then nodded, as if she understood more than Sarah thought. That night, back home, rain began to fall. Not a cold rain, but one gentle enough to cleanse the city after a dusty week. Sarah stood in the small kitchen making tea, hearing Lucia laugh in the living room over her favorite cartoon. Shadows stretched in 2 sizes on the walls, 2 figures walking side by side through dark garages and glass towers. Sarah looked at her phone. A message from an unknown number. "Are you okay? I'm in Dublin now. Still, wake at 5 a.m. like before." She typed back, "I'm okay. Thank you for believing in a cleaning lady." A reply came a few minutes later. "Thank you for reminding me justice isn't in the system, but in the hearts of those brave enough to stand outside it." Sarah smiled softly, like a breeze in early spring. She locked her phone and poured another cup of tea. She dimmed the lights, leaving just enough glow for quiet. There are deeds no one notices. People are never called to stand in the spotlight, but if they disappeared, the system would collapse. If you've ever stood in darkness and kept your light, no one needs to tell you to be strong, because you are living proof. You don't have to climb to the highest floor. But if one day you find yourself there, remember to hold the door open for those who come after you. This isn't a story about a hero. It's about someone who kept her decency even when nobody was watching. And maybe you've been that person too, only no one's told your story yet.